Lai Massacre. In March 1968, American soldiers entered a small village in South Vietnam called My Lai. Over the next few hours, they killed between 300 and 500 people who lived there. None of these people were fighting back. Most were women, children, and elderly villagers. Some were shot while gathered in groups. Others were killed in their homes or in ditches where they had been forced to go. The soldiers had been told the area might contain enemy fighters, but no battle happened that day. There was no gunfight. The people who died were unarmed civilians going about their daily lives. After the massacre, military officers tried to hide what happened. They wrote false reports claiming the deaths came from combat. The truth only came out more than a year later when a soldier who had heard about the killings sent letters to government officials and journalists. Photographs taken that day eventually reached the public. The images were horrifying. A military investigation confirmed that crimes had occurred. Only one person, a lieutenant, was convicted in court. He spent just a few years under house arrest before being released. The massacre shocked Americans in the world. It showed how war can strip away basic humanity and how command failures can enable terrible acts. Atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In August 1945, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The first hit the city of Hiroshima on August 6th. The second hit Nagasaki 3 days later. Each bomb destroyed nearly everything within miles of where it exploded. In Hiroshima, around 70,000 people died instantly. In Nagasaki, about 40,000 died right away. Tens of thousands more died in the weeks and months that followed from burns, injuries, and radiation sickness. The radiation caused cancers and other illnesses that killed people for years afterward. Almost everyone who died was a civilian. While both cities had some military facilities, they were not military bases. They were cities filled with ordinary people living ordinary lives. Under today's laws of war, attacks that kill this many civilians would be considered illegal. The rules are clear that you cannot target places where most of the victims will be people not involved in fighting. The bombs did help end the war quickly. Japan surrendered less than a week after the second bombing. But the way the war ended does not change what happened to the people in those cities. No Gun Ri Massacre. In July 1950, just weeks after the Korean War began, hundreds of South Korean refugees fled south trying to escape the fighting. They were civilians, mostly women and children, carrying whatever belongings they could. Near a village called No Gun Ri, American soldiers stopped them at a railroad bridge. The refugees took shelter under the bridge, thinking they would be safe. Instead, soldiers began firing at them. The shooting continued for several days. Survivors later said that soldiers fired machine guns and rifles into the crowd. Parents tried to shield their children with their bodies. People who tried to leave were shot. Between 100 and 300 civilians died there. For decades, the survivors tried to tell their story, but few people listened. In the late 1990s, journalists investigated and found military documents and interviewed veterans who had been there. Some soldiers said they had orders to shoot. Others said commanders had warned that refugees might be enemy soldiers in disguise. An American investigation in 2001 confirmed that the killings happened, but said there was not enough evidence to prove soldiers were directly ordered to shoot civilians. The truth is that frightened, confused soldiers fired on innocent people and no one stopped them. Phoenix Program. During the Vietnam War, the United States and South Vietnamese government ran a program called Phoenix. The goal was to destroy the Viet Cong by finding and eliminating the people who supported them in villages and towns. This meant targeting not just fighters, but also political organizers, local officials, and anyone suspected of helping the enemy. Teams would capture suspects and interrogate them. Many were tortured to get information. Thousands were killed without ever going to trial. The program killed at least 20,000 people, possibly many more. The problem was that many victims were not actually Viet Cong. Some were falsely accused by neighbors settling personal disputes. Others were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The program gave people enormous power to decide who lived and died, and that power was often abused. Journalists who investigated found widespread torture. Former operatives admitted to extrajudicial killings. Congressional hearings in the 1970s heard testimony about the brutal methods used. The program violated basic legal principles. People were killed based on suspicion, not proof. There were no fair trials. The rules of war say you must distinguish between combatants and civilians, but Phoenix treated entire communities as the enemy. Use of Agent Orange. From 1961 to 1971, American planes sprayed nearly 20 million gallons of chemical herbicides over Vietnam. The most common was called Agent Orange. The military wanted to kill the jungle plants that gave enemy fighters cover and to destroy crops that might feed them. The chemicals worked. They stripped leaves from trees and turned green forest brown. But Agent Orange contained a poison called dioxin, one of the most toxic substances humans have created. It does not break down easily in the environment. It stays in soil and water for decades. People absorb it through their skin, by breathing it, or by eating contaminated food. The effects were catastrophic. Vietnamese people developed cancers, diabetes, and other diseases. Children were born with severe birth defects. The problems continue even today, more than 50 years later. American veterans who handled or were exposed to the chemical got sick too. At the time, there was no specific law against using herbicides in war, but the scale of suffering and the long-term damage to civilians violated the basic principle that weapons should not cause unnecessary suffering. Millions of people who never fought in the war still live with its consequences. Abu Ghraib, prison abuse. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq and overthrew its government. During the occupation that followed, American soldiers ran a prison called Abu Ghraib near Baghdad. They held Iraqi prisoners there, many of whom had been picked up during raids and had not been charged with crimes. In late 2003 and early 2004, soldiers at the prison tortured and abused the prisoners. They beat people. They forced prisoners into painful positions for hours. They threatened them with dogs. They stripped people naked and humiliated them. Soldiers took photographs of what they were doing. Some of the images showed prisoners hooded and chained. Others showed soldiers smiling next to people they were abusing. In April 2004, the photographs leaked to the news media. The world saw what American soldiers had done. Multiple investigations followed. They all confirmed that the abuse violated the Geneva Conventions, the international rules for treating prisoners. The soldiers involved had broken the law. Some were convicted and sent to prison, though their sentences were relatively short. But questions remained about whether higher-ranking officers and government officials knew what was happening or had created conditions that allowed it. The abuse became a symbol of the failures of the Iraq War and severely damaged America's reputation. Haditha Killings. In November 2005, a group of U.S. Marines was driving through the Iraqi town of Haditha when a roadside bomb exploded, killing one Marine and wounding others. The survivors were angry and looking for whoever set the bomb. Over the next few hours, Marines went into nearby houses. They shot and killed 24 Iraqi civilians. The dead included a 76-year-old man in a wheelchair, women, and children as young as 1-year-old. Some were shot in their beds. Others died trying to hide in closets. The Marines initially reported that the civilians had been killed by the bomb or caught in a firefight with insurgents, but there had been no firefight. A few months later, an Iraqi human rights worker and a journalist began asking questions. They interviewed survivors and collected evidence. The real story came out. Military investigators confirmed that the killings were unlawful. 8 Marines were charged with crimes, but legal proceedings dragged on for years. Charges against most were eventually dropped. One man pleaded guilty to a minor offense and received no jail time. The families of the victims never saw justice. The legal outcome did not change the facts. 24 innocent people were killed in their homes in a few hours of rage. Targeted drone strikes on civilians. After the September 11th attacks, the United States began using armed drones to hunt down suspected terrorists in countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, and Somalia. Drones fly high overhead, often unseen and unheard, controlled by operators thousands of miles away. When a target is identified, the drone fires a missile. The strikes are precise in the sense that the missile goes exactly where it is aimed. But precision does not mean accuracy. If the intelligence is wrong, or if there are people nearby who are not targets, civilians die. Over the years, thousands of strikes have been conducted. The exact numbers are disputed. The government says civilian deaths are rare. Independent investigators who track the strikes say hundreds or even thousands of civilians have been killed. Leaked documents have shown that the military sometimes labels all men of fighting age in a strike zone as combatants, even if they are farmers or shopkeepers. The laws of war require distinguishing between fighters and civilians and making sure attacks are proportional. They also require due process before killing someone. Drone strikes often bypass all of this. People are killed based on patterns of behavior or intelligence reports, sometimes without even knowing their names. The strikes happen in countries where the United States is not officially at war, because technology moves faster than accountability.